This episode of 1v1, the Creator Interview Series, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support this show and the Boss Rush Media family of podcasts, head over to patreon.com/bossrushmedia or search for us on the Patreon app on your smart device. Thanks for helping us build something better. Hello, everyone, and welcome to 1v1 with Boss Rush Network. I'm your host, Celeste Roberts. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Chase Bethea, an NYX award-winning and BGMO-nominated freelance composer / technical audio designer for video games and a variety of other media. He has been working professionally in the industry for 11 years and has shipped over 21 games thus far. He is known in the industry as the Swiss Army knife of video game composition. Chase, I don't know if I have ever given such a dramatic introduction for an interview before, so you take the cake with that one.
Thank you. Thank you, Celeste. I really appreciate it. It's wonderful to be here with you right now and getting to talk and do all these things. So thank you so much for that kind introduction. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much as well for being here. Actually, listeners, Chase and I were talking for like half an hour just about our areas and life and music. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm pretty much interviewing you without actually recording you. So
the pre-record, right? The preview of the pre-interview.
Like the behind the scenes and
the scenes, yes.
You're just so much fun to talk to. And I heard of you a few years ago when our friend BU mentioned you. She's like, oh, he'd be great for 1v1. And I'm finally getting to talk with you. And you actually reached out to both Kyle Von Kubik and me about contributing to Read Only Magazine, which I like to contribute to and help with. And you were saying, do y'all want to interview me? I think y'all have an issue called music coming out. I'd really love to be a part of that.
Yes. And it was very kind to be with that collaboration with the both of you. So thank you again for the opportunity. It's fantastic. It was absolutely delighted.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I love seeing people get excited about things they're passionate about because I probably say this all the time in the interviews. It's so easy to get lost in the humdrum of life and
yes,
things can stress you out. So when I have the opportunity to connect with people who are very happy about something, it energizes me.
Yeah, completely. Feeling the energy and then having that reciprocity put back, it just amplifies the inspiration overall, I think, and I think you're like mostly the same way.
Yeah. So what's going on? It's January 2023, a new year. How's your year turning out so far?
Very, very good. I need to actually update my bio because this month marks the 12th year working in the industry as a professional video game composer. So this is the anniversary month. And I was brought out as a guest at MagFest. And I had been trying to go to MagFest for 10 years. And my first MagFest, I was brought out as a guest and was on a panel with Austin Wintry and Mason Lieberman and a couple other people on the panel, and did my own autograph signing for the first time and things like that too. And yeah, it's been a really, really good year and working on some really cool projects in the interim and gearing up for some new projects to be scoring too. So it's turning out that it's going to be a really good year. I call it the Jordan year.
The Jordan year. Like Michael Jordan?
Like Michael Jordan is 23. Yeah.
Nice. So MagFest, you were able to sign autographs. What was that feeling like?
That was a really it's almost indescribable, but it genuinely felt really good. It was really cool, and I'm still humble about the experience because internally it's something I've always wanted. It's something I dreamed of at least doing at some capacity in my career. And so when you finally get there, it's I don't like using the term surreal, but it does feel unreal to believe that you're in that moment in time really doing that, and that and then you feel like, oh, this is just the beginning of this stuff. It's going to continue forward, and this is where you arrived. You're home. That's what it felt like.
You're home. Oh, I love that. Like everything's built up to this moment.
Yes. Yeah.
If you want to be a Patreon producer, head on over to Patreon, patreon.com/bossrushmedia, and find out which tier is right for you. Our Patreon producers at the $5 tier or higher for this month are Adriel Munger, Austin Campbell, Celeste Roberts, Christian S., Sana Dierig, Francisco Santillan, and Rebecca Jewell. Thank you for your continued support.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So MagFest, how is that different from other conventions, I suppose? Like what's its unique angle?
Yeah, so MagFest has been around for about 20 years. In fact, this not only did I get brought out for this as a guest my first time, it came out to the 20th anniversary of MagFest. So that was a big jump off, and it was a celebration in its own right. It used to stand for Midwest Gaming Festival, I believe, and it's now Music and Gaming Festival. The MagFest attendance goes up to about an average of 23,000 attendees. Once you're there, you understand how they house that many folks. The Gaylord Hotel is massive. This isn't your typical Marriott, Hyatt, this is not this. It is gorgeous inside. It is large. It is not in charge, but it is large, and it is just it can house that many folks. It is really that capable. This year, I believe, was about 19,800 and something attendees that had attended. Yeah, and I remember last year was about half of that, so they've almost doubled their years back. Not capping what it was a few years ago before the pandemic, but and see, this is how much I know about it from the history and things like that too. So yeah, the angle is everything celebrating music in games and more. To be honest with you, they had crocheting class, they had a full arcade, they had wrestling arenas, VR corners, quiet rooms with people just playing, just doing puzzles. You literally walk in a room and you can hear ants walk because it is that quiet in there. It's just separate from everybody, the hustle and the bustle. They've got panels about music, they've got different activities, they've got cosplay. It is a jocularity of an event overall. And so the angle, I would have to say, is just really a big, nice festival about music and games.
Wow. Are you tired? Have you recovered yet?
from that whole explanation.
Oh no, from the experience, because conventions and expos, those can be very tiring.
5 days, and just when I was getting settled, it was over. And
Oh,
that, I remember that experience of everyone like leaving with all their suitcases and getting their rides, and that Sunday, and then people packing up. They were Audi 5000. So it was just when I was getting settled. I remember that Sunday. I was like, I'm all right. I'm ready for another day. Nope, we're going home.
oh.
So it definitely is going to be an experience I'm going to have pursue next year and enjoy even more.
Wow. And you've been to PAX as well. Both, how many PAX events are there? Do you know? I know there's a PAX West, PAX
There are,
East.
yeah, there's PAX West, Prime, whatever they call it. I think there's still PAX Australia. I know there's PAX East. There's no more PAX South, I
Okay.
think. So maybe 3 left, as opposed to that. I think they almost have 5. So those only ones there. So I've been, my first PAX was the height of the pandemic, and that was in February of 2020. Yeah. That's when everyone I remember, was doing the elbows. They had masks. Nobody really knew, wasn't announced that it was a pandemic yet. You just heard about this thing that was going around. And then you saw different companies pull out of the other event called Game Developers Conference, and that the being to be there, my first PAX East was awesome. I actually it started off really great because I got my first big game news. I was going to work on this game, and it was my first big contract. So I won the bid on that, and I'm coming down. I'm showcasing a game that I won the award for, Nick's Award, Aground, and Aground was being showcased there on the floor, and was there with the team. I haven't seen the team since I think we worked on. Excuse me, when I say the team, the Fancy Fish Games development team, and I hadn't seen them since an Indiecade. Maybe that was 2012. I seen them. That was the last time in person. So it was an interesting first time / reunion experience. I got to hang out with BU and company and folks from Whitethorn too, because that's actually how Ground ended up being there. It's when I learned about the craze of Fall Guys. We saw how that traversed the pandemic. Yeah, actually Fall Guys booth was right by us. So a lot of people kind of trickled over into our thing, but Fall Guys had this massive booth, and you could hear it like and we were just and yeah, it was. I didn't know what. I'm thankful, cool because Fall Guys took off in the pandemic because of people being at home, but yeah, the experience of just all that energy that is typically there was just really really fun, and that was my first and really cool PAX. Always meant to do a blog about it, never got around to it. So I guess this is really cool that I'm actually talking about it now.
It's like a little recording of a diary. Dear diary.
Yes, I do those often. I do those.
So do you have any other events planned for 2023?
Yeah. So I'm going to be speaking at GDC for the first time. Whoa. I've been attending for about 10 years. I'm going to be, thank you. Yes, it's going to be a really big opportunity to one of my talks, a solo talk, not on a panel. Even though I'm speaking twice, I'm going to be on a panel with other people, Star, Jermaine, and Xavier Nelson Jr., and a couple other folks that are Jared Huntley. Some of these people are really big, I would say, pioneers in their own right for the new era of video games going forward. So it's kind of an honor to be out there with this micro talk for that part of GDC. But my own talk, I'm going to be talking about how I created music systems and the combat music that I did for this game called Quest Like Pocket that was released last year. It's a mobile game that was developed by Sprite Ranch Studios. And so I'll be doing that. And then my music's going to be performed by the Helix Collective June 3rd at Cal State Northridge. Yeah. And it's going to be like played live to the game. Well, not live to the game, but it'll have game footage, and the ensemble is going to be performing my music live there. And that's really cool.
Have you ever had other people perform your music?
Yes. At MagWest last year was the opportunity to work with the Virtual Video Game Orchestra, where they performed music that I'm scoring for the game, also developed by Fancy Fish Games, Stardander School for Witches. And so we worked together and collaborated on a orchestra suite. And so selections from the soundtrack, about 5 different songs. And that music got performed by them at MagWest last year. So that was my first time of having that experience. And once you have it, you're kind of hooked. You're like, yeah. But it's not the time. I performed my own music before in Indiecade 2019. So that was my first performance of my own music. Then MagWest by the Virtual Video Game Orchestra, and now Helix Collective in summer of this year.
Oh my goodness. So do you have official sheet music that you share with these groups so that they can read your music and everything?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, I do.
That's we were talking before this recording about being in band, and you shared that you were in band in school, and I was in band in school, and I'm so happy to know you've kept up that trade, that skill, because it's been so long, like probably almost 16 years since I have looked at sheet music.
Wow, yeah. Do you still feel like if you see it that you'd still be able to read treble clef?
Maybe a little bit. I mean, I'd probably have to get like Essential Elements or whatever that book was from fifth grade to remind myself. I remember being so excited when I figured out the notes on the flute to play Zelda's Lullaby just by,
Oh yeah.
just by.
Da-na-na-na-na-na-na.
And what did you play for our listeners when you were in school?
S- So when I was in school, I played alto saxophone. Before I had that, though, my mom had bought me a recorder, and then when I was living with my father, I he got me the alto saxophone. So I had been in music fiddling around for quite some time. My first instrument, though, that was playing around with my mom had got me was this toy piano, and I still have that piano to this day, and I've actually used it in a couple different game compositions because it just actually ends up working out where they sound like an NES drum sound chip. Yeah, so it's the I learned when I did the homework, and it's kind of bizarre because this keyboard now is like $80, and like I said, it's a toy piano from the '90s. So
$80?
yeah, because the Yamaha had hired this company to replicate the chipset similar to like what was in a NES, which is a 2A03 chip
Oh,
of like four channels. So when you play the drums on this toy piano, it sounds like the drums that some from something off of an NES game. Literally, you don't have to do any tweaking or anything, and so my ears kind of pick up on those little things. But and besides the tangent, toy piano, recorder, have maracas from that time, and then as I got into fifth, sixth, seventh grade, I played alto saxophone. I was in beginning for 1 year, and then I quickly advanced to advanced band
wow. So,
and choir.
and choir. Okay. So,
Yeah.
are your parents also musically inclined?
My mom is musically trained and sings. She would dance and act as well. My father indirectly, mostly just hobby passion of doing DJing and some radio hosting now of a show that he typically does on Sundays. But so in a way, yes, and for both, yeah, in a way. My mom more so than my father.
Oh, wow. So, did you ever have like a little family band situation or play at like an organization or local events? No? Okay.
Mm-mm. Nope, not that I can remember at least.
Oh,
No, nothing like that. So everything is just mostly absorbed. Like I'm just musically absorbed.
oh, that is really neat. So, did you grow up listening to different genres of music, or did your parents try to, I don't know, like maybe influence you? Hey, here are the classics, or hey, here's jazz. Hey, here's R&B, or hey, here's pop. Anything like that?
Yeah. So yes, to answer your question, and I was introduced to many different things. So my mom's side of the family is Bayesian, and the that heritage is the island of Barbados, and so I grew up with calypso and reggae, and then being in Chicago, it being one of the main cities of jazz. So I listened to a lot of smooth jazz growing up and learned it by ear. And I got alto saxophone. I actually didn't have sheet music, so I used to write out the letters. So I used to learn things off the radio and write the letters down because I didn't have sheet music. My
Oh,
father didn't know. So the only thing I could do was just learn what the letters were. I knew what they were when I read it on the sheet music, but then I didn't have sheet music to transcribe it. So I just used to write letters, like the actual alphabet letters, and learned it that way. But the earliest music memory, and it's well, their music memory of me and my father would tell the story the best is that as I got older, I figured out the entire story. So it's great to tell it here for the first time that they would play R&B and they would play pop music and other things too, some classical as well. But I remember this song that was written by Quincy Jones called Secret Garden. And apparently, as my father would tell it, is that I was in the backseat of his truck and the song would come on the radio and I knew the entire song. Now I'm no older probably than two, maybe 3 years old. And he said he'd look at me in the back and he said, "How do you know this song?" And so I asked him, I said, well, how did you learn that I learned the song? He's like, well, I just assumed that your mom had played it and that she taught it to you. So then I asked my mom, I said, well, mom, I said, do you remember playing the song? She's like, well, I played it all the time, but I never taught it to you. So I learned it on my own, just hearing it at that young age. This is what once I got the both stories from both parents, and I was thinking, so you didn't teach me the song, and you don't know how I learned the song.
Incredible. So that's a
And this is like a 6-minute song, by the way.
Okay, Quincy Jones,
Yeah.
as in Rashida Jones' father?
Father,
Yes,
correct.
okay. Oh my gosh, that's okay, Chase. That's a gift right there. That's incredible. And a lot of you hear that sometimes. That I was going to say a lot of people, but I don't know how many people really. But every now and then you hear about people who just they can hear something and replicate it. Like that's incredible. And so do you have a favorite genre now, or do you just like to keep your mind open to different types of music?
I believe being a composer, especially a video game composer, my mind has to stay open to just music in general, because I never know how I'm going to hear something, what I'm like, what I'm going to pick up on.
Mm-hmm.
So my favorite genre is it's kind of a quote cop out answer, but it is video game music. But video game music is all the genres to me. But it's doesn't mean that outside of video game music, meaning music that's not in the video game, that I'm not open to other styles of music that are out. It's just I like it to be indirect and recommended, because a lot of people don't really, because I can't understand. Well, it's not understand. It's the recommendations I feel are not understood based off of the musical taste, because I don't typically have one. So then it's almost, well, why won't you then just accept the recommendations? It's like, well, mostly because I'm probably writing for a game I don't want to be influenced by at the moment.
So if you're commissioned to write something for a game, do you find, okay, let me not play any other games, or do you find like, oh no, I want to play other types of games for inspiration? Or I guess I'm thinking like, how do you find the inspiration but also make sure, okay, this is my own sound? If that makes sense, like how do you come to the decision, okay, this feels right with me, and it's not just this replication of something else I heard, if that makes sense?
Yeah.
I just came up with that on the fly.
Nice. It makes great sense. So I'm very cognizant about, number one, what other things have sounded like before,
Mm-hmm.
and two, hopefully that it doesn't sound like anything that I've written previously before to my extent. Now, some people have been able to pin my sound. My signature sound has been solidified for several years now, like over a decade. I do play games for inspiration, but it's not through that. Music is already, I feel, has that sonic identity. So I know with me, I'm typically able to play a game and then kind of hear what it's going to be like before I write it in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm just playing the build, I can kind of tell, as long as the reference music is not in there already. And then if it is, I have to mute it and then try to figure out like what the game is typically telling me. Because what I talked about on a keynote that I did for Global Game Jam last year is that the theme was every game has a pulse. And so I'm looking and listening for what that pulse is, and then I'm able to build out what the sample palette in my mind would be to breed that sonic identity to that game project. So hopefully, if you were playing in the room and someone who wasn't in the room with you could identify what that game is without seeing the graphics on the screen.
Yes, and I'm glad you brought that up, because for my reference, I was telling Chase, I was watching some interviews and going through his videos preparing for our 1v1, and I think my favorite video is the one for Aztec Ride.
Yes.
Where it's short. It's Karn Evil Roll. And it's about 1 minute 30 seconds long, and you've spliced these different segments of you playing these different instruments and making different sound effects, like with your mouth as well. So
Mhm.
you're a one-man show. That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's awesome. It was so much fun. Do you do that for all the games you work on, or is that kind of just an outlier?
So I am starting to, and the reason is because of how much fun Aztec Ride was to work on, and how much, and I did it for just promotional purposes, but it got such a great reception that I have continued to do that forward. And it's funny because I was actually starting to work on one today, that of a game that I'm going to be announcing tomorrow that I'm officially on, even though I've written 3 tracks already. But I figured I'm just going to do it in a different way and promote it. And so that's, yeah, typically how I'm doing those things. And I like it. And other people like it too. So I'm just going to continue doing that.
So with the games that you work on, are you the sole composer, or are there multiple people involved?
Typically, it's just me.
Okay.
I'd love to work with other composers on projects. It just depends on the budget of the developer to bring on at least 2 composers and things like that too. I feel like it could definitely enhance the sound and bring more storytelling to the game project overall. But typically, really, it is just me, and I'm okay with that.
Do you have any? I know it's kind of probably like picking your favorite child if you had children. Do you have any?
I think I'm gonna know you're gonna ask.
I know. Do you have any favorite video game composers, or are there any you've admired over the years?
Actually, I guess I didn't know what you were gonna ask. I do have a few favorite video game composers. I enjoy Jesper Kude. I enjoy Yuzo Koshiro. I enjoy Yoko Shimomura, especially since I was able. Mostly people like Shimomura because of her Kingdom Hearts soundtrack, but I really appreciate her early Game Boy compositions and the masterfulness that she was able to pull off with some of those. And I think on Sega Genesis and things too. So yeah, that's she's another one I really enjoy. And Ko Atani, who did Shadow of the Colossus, I really enjoy his work. Outside of game music, it's Bernard Herrmann. I really enjoy his work. And I also, of course, I really enjoy Tim Follin. I really, really, really enjoy Tim Follin's work. He did Pictionary. He did Echo, the Dolphin Defender of the Future. He did Plock. And it's not just him. It's him and his brother, Jeff Follin, as well. So I just want to point that out. He did the Amazing Spider-Man thing, I think, on Super Nintendo, and the Silver Surfer game. And if you just listen to between Jesper, Tim, and I just have to say, another composer I really enjoy is Kenji Ito. If you can probably determine my sound between the 3 of them, because that's who I feel I'm influenced by the most musically, because that's what my ear they're writing in ways that my mind has always thought of before I was really getting out. Kenji Ito was one of the earliest ones I was introduced to, along with Nobuo Uematsu, who obviously it's a lot of people's favorites and definitely on my list too.
Oh.
But so it's in Kenji Ito, and then it moves into Jesper, and then it moves into Tim, in that order. And so throughout my career, there's this amalgamation of sound that is intertwining and building forth and becoming bigger. But I've got other composers too that I guess I'm thinking about Antonio Carlos Jobim, which you might hear influenced by the project that I'm going to be announcing tomorrow on, and other, just a lot. So yeah, it's not one. It's probably a good list and a blog awesome. There, right?
That's okay. That's what you're probably, after this interview, you're going to think, I know I forgot somebody.
I almost forgot Tim, and I was thinking like, no.
So a little behind the curtain, I like to send the people I interview some questions to kind of help them prepare. And I don't think that one was, well, maybe it was on the list. I'm not sure.
I don't think that was on there. No.
So that's, darn you, Celeste.
No, heck no. I'm really good at improv.
So, you know what's occurring to me as you were talking about the composers you admire and just your experience writing game music. So you have an opportunity to see some gameplay without music, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And that I was listening to one of your interviews and or like one of your tip videos, I believe, from your YouTube channel, and you were explaining the importance of having music in a video game, why that's such an important component. And you gave an example of, okay, imagine playing a horror game without the creepy noises, or imagine playing Zelda without those anthems coming alive. And what is it like to play a game, like to see the work before the music? Is it like, does it feel like unsettling, or does it fill you with a lot of inspiration? You're like, oh, I'm going to fill the holes right here. Here are the gaps.
Yeah, so I was mentioning before, I'm able to feel the pulse of the
Mhm.
game. So it's a bit exhilarating because I get to craft that sonic identity for that project for other people to experience. So like I was mentioning before, it gives me the chance to imprint on it what it would be like. And I'm thinking about this now a little bit deeper. So I'm not sure if you're familiar, but sometimes on bigger projects, some composers may have to demo for the game that they work on. Let's use Assassin's Creed as an example. An agent, a composer's agent, will go out. They'll talk to whoever they need to talk to solidify whatever deal that it takes to kind of get that composer hired on. One or two composers, sometimes five I've even seen. And so if that demo lands, then that means that the vision was matched with whoever is in charge of the project, and that's what they want to go forward with and take on, obviously, with the politics of financials and budgets and things, etc. And I always thought, what if you didn't choose that composer? So the game ships, everybody loves it, it's critically acclaimed, concerts are happening. Oh my gosh, this is the best thing since pancakes and sliced bread and everything on that is good and sweet with funnel cakes.
Oh, funnel cake.
But what, right? You're like, ooh. But what if it wasn't that composer? Let's take a parallel universe.
Oh, I see where you're going.
And so this is where my mind thinks of as, okay, yeah, it was me who did this for this game, but I always think, what if this composer did it for this game? What would that sound like? Would it sound better? Would it still be as critically acclaimed? Would it still be received? Would anybody care? Would it not? Would it help the game? Would it hurt the game? So I'm always almost thinking, this is my moment. This is what this is now. But I'm also thinking in a parallel universe of, what if someone else was writing this? So I'm almost like splitting my identity in half. And sometimes I think that it gets in the way of what I'm trying to listen and hear for. But I think I find it fascinating that if there was like a podcast of demos where it's like, well, the composer of this Assassin's Creed game was this person, but this was also a demo submitted, and this is what the game could have sounded like. And I just think that's really cool to just think in that other way, because we do get sometimes we don't even get a build, we just get art or even a game design document. So if I get those and I don't get the build, I'm a little bit spoiled by working with Fancy Fish, because of the programmer David. He's really fast, so by the time he's approaching me with something, he's like, I got this, try it out. I'm like, okay. And I'm able to just, that's where it's coming from. And for me, I'm a huge retro gamer, so I've played a lot of games, so I can understand and categorize where it fits, what it is, what it doesn't. And that's how I honestly know from being a player since a child, I have all the experience of knowing what that world may or may not be like. I'm not going to use that instrument because it's going to give this direction to the player. It's not going to use this chord progression because it's going to make the player feel this way. Mm-hmm. So I'm not even thinking in a music design format. I'm thinking as a player who just happens to really like music. I think that's the mindset I go into. It's like a childlike state I just put myself into.
Bringing that wonder. And I think it helps that you love video games. That probably is a big bonus, because that's such a different medium from, well, I don't know, would you want to work on movies or TV shows, or would you want to?
Yeah, I've worked on a TV show before. It didn't work out, and so I definitely knew that's not for me, and or maybe the team. And but I went to school, and in school they teach you about film music, and I've worked on film. And typically, what they say is, "Sounds like it should be in a video game." Cool. So what it's told me is that I usually need to be working on a video game documentary, which I'm very happy to do, or I need to be working on a TV show that is about video games, which I'm also happy to do.
Just anyone listening.
Because if yeah, because that's what it's told me is that, okay, your music's good, but it sounds like it should be in a video game. Okay, great. And I'm very at peace, and I'm very joyful to be working in the industry that I'm in.
Oh, you're so fortunate to do something that you love. So this, I'm assuming this is your full-time job, or do you do something else full-time and this is your side job?
This is my full-time job.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is incredible. So
Yeah.
are you your own boss, kind of?
I am
What?
every day. I make the big decisions and the right decisions and the hard decisions and all those things too. Yeah.
Wow. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your education and your first start in the world after school? What did you major in? What was it like after you finished school? Like, what were some of your first projects? Did you work for a company? Did you have any other kind of, I don't know, like office type jobs before you became self-employed?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So education wise, I went to, I was in Chicago up to about seventh grade. Then I moved out to California with my mom. And then I finished eighth grade, and then I went into high school. And by this time, I don't have my instrument anymore, so I'm not playing anything. But I am playing. I am playing games. I'm playing a lot actually, and but I'm doing music. I'm figuring out computer music and figuring out different genres that I like and want to do. And typically it rolls in like hip hop and R&B and trying to figure that stuff out. But playing games and sampling music from video games and doing that stuff because I like it and I think it's cool. And then graduate high school, and then I go to work actually. I don't even I from high school I go to Los Angeles Recording School, and I learn audio engineering because I think I'm going to be an audio engineer. And then I graduate that school with honors, and then I get a job at a company called Music Plus Television, which then turned into Blaze Media. And at that company, I had three jobs. So I was 19, and then I became the front of house engineer at 19.
What?
Which in school, yeah, they told me it was going to take 5 years, and it took me 3 months. And so I was working with group like artists from like Dub C and Wiz Khalifa before he was Wiz
Are you
Khalifa, like
serious?
huge, yeah, and Cherry Pop and
Incredible.
Daddies, working for Nuclear Free City, which ended up being an infamous game. I remember working with them, setting up the band mics and stuff. So I was front of house engineer, and I was studio manager because I was to greet the artists. And then I opted to help out with IT, so building computers. And I was also a composer for the studio because they needed music for their content, and they had licenses for music libraries a little bit. It wasn't even a big thing back then the time. And so I became the composer to make this entire music library. So I was writing 3 tracks a day for many different styles. And then the recession happened, and I survived about 6 layoffs, furloughs from the company. And finally they hit me. And so I decided to go back to school and went to Moore Park College, and I majored in music composition. And I stayed there for about 5 years. I became the first conductor's assistant under the tutelage of Professor Song, James Song, who started the Moore Park Symphony Orchestra. And when I was there, he had almost been there about 20 something years. And then he officially retired just before the pandemic. And but for the 20 years he had it, he never had an assistant, and I was his first assistant for being the conductor my first conductor assistant. And the reason is because I was in the school program, which had an applied program for piano. So this is where I started coming back into like learning the instrument. I always was tinkering with it in high school. I got a MIDI keyboard and still wanted to figure out how to do and teaching myself scoring, but I didn't get serious about it until I went back to Moore Park College because I had decided just before then that I wanted to be in video game music. I wanted to do it. People told me about it for 7 years. The other stuff wasn't working out. So I said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. But I need to go back to school to go in the competition. So during that, I got into the applied program. I studied under 2 different piano teachers, and one of them being Mona DeCesar. And I definitely love her so much. She challenged me in many different ways. She knew my personality. She was able to get me up to the chops I needed to get into Cal State Northridge. And in the orchestra, you didn't have piano to play in that respect. So the only way to get through the credits properly through the program was to be in the orchestra. So I was so my demeanor and my ethic was so strong. I was able to just become the first conductor assistant of Professor James Song. And this is huge because he doesn't trust anybody.
Wow.
He's very particular. So, and like I said, he started that orchestra for like by the time I came in, it had been almost close to 20 years. This is people that he's worked with for that long and going. And so I would play bass drum on some parts. And then Professor James Song gave me my first conducting opportunity. And I did that in front of an entire concert at the Performance Arts Center at Moore Park College. Then I transferred to Cal State Northridge, got into the music program for media composition under the director of Professor Sellers. And then I was studying film music, but I wasn't there for music. I really just wanted to just do orchestration and call it a day, but the institution has rules, so you have to do this full time. So was doing that, but still found my way and founded out that there was a video game club, and it just so happened to be in the second semester of the year that I had started. So the first semester I heard about it, and then officially had launched in the second semester. And I was like, thank goodness, because I needed something about games in there. Film was driving me crazy. I knew back at Moore Park College when the composer Chris P. Bacon was talking and came to talk, and I was supposed to go to a rehearsal, and I was thinking like, film music is not for me. I'm not doing this. But even in Moore Park College, I won an award for a competition I did for a score, and I think that was when my composition teacher said, you've got it. And I did that score overnight, even having a full day of school. So I remember coming home from that and 7 o'clock and working on it till about 4 a.m, getting 2 hours of sleep and going back to school, and then won the award for the best one. I think the poem was for Got a Story. It's a motion graphic. So that was my first award that I got, and that's what it started. The thing, it was like, oh, I got it, and I did this overnight, and I didn't finish music theory classes, so it means I have a really good ear and I have the ethics. So then that's where it's like, okay, then we'll have to go to CISA and we'll have to do. So I'm really on this because I'm figuring out if the competition that I know is out there, especially in video game music, is really high. So I wanted to make sure I covered everything that I possibly could in terms of the areas to be able to compete at a high level.
Goodness.
So that is I know you asked me another question, but I know the background for at least the education, and that's typically where it ends.
That's incredible.
I graduated, of course, with honors too.
That is amazing, Chase. That's incredible. What would be your advice to someone who is interested in following your path? Like, if you could go back to your younger self, is there anything you would change? Is there anything you would tell your past self?
I wouldn't change. I would tell my past self probably to say, be prepared for the long journey. This is definitely an open world RPG in that respect. But if I was to give advice to someone, to just say, check your ego, stay humble, be genuine, and know your worth of your time, and just stay honest and be yourself.
And I've heard that advice my whole life, but I think it resonates with me more and more as I get older. Do you find that as well? Like it hits more?
this one of the reasons I'm able to answer you that way is because it hits more. I had to really sit and think about it. It's like, yeah, definitely check your ego. It's not always about you. It's, you got to listen. You got to take a step back, know your worth, know your time. People like to take advantage. I feel like I've gotten as far as the industry is because I am genuine. I am nice. I am humble. And I feel like the people respond to that more than, I mean, anybody can be, I'm sorry, curse, but an asshole. Like, anybody can be mean. But why do you want to do that? And so I feel, just be cool. Just be cool. And yeah, things will usually just come around to you, at least in my experience. But yeah, going back to I would say, like, hey, it's okay. You're going to choose your own path, but be prepared. It's going to take a little bit longer.
That's awesome. And there's something you told me before we started recording that I think applies here, because I was telling you I didn't start listening to podcasts until about 2017. I didn't even really know what podcasts were until my partner and I started dating. And do you remember what you told me about art?
Yes, I do. You are never late for art. Art is on time for you.
Do you have a tattoo of that? Because I love it.
I don't, because I came up with it, I think, last week when I was frustrated. And the reason, I'll just give a small etymology about it. Some people believe that if something is out in the world, a video game, a film, a TV show, a book, some music, that you should have heard it by now. It's been out for 10 years. I don't know how you haven't experienced this yet. How have you not seen this movie? How did you miss that song? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know it was living life on your time. So I had bills to pay. I didn't have those opportunities. I went through a crisis. Also, I'm thinking, in my mind, what do you say to a child? You're 5 years old. How have you not seen Citizen Kane?
Okay, if a 5-year-old's watching Citizen Kane,
I know Citizen Kane. Right, but
I know what you're saying. I'm just amused
point,
at
right?
the idea.
Like, just thinking. Well, we'll use a better example. How have you not seen Lady and the Tramp?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, Lady and the Tramp came out before you were born, right? And so if you want to sit down and talk about all the things you haven't seen or read or heard or played or experienced, let's sit down and talk about it. But that's my point is, and I just feel like it's selfish for someone to say that to you and to put that shame and that guilt on you for how dare you not carve out time for something like this. It's been out and now I'm going to spoil it for you because I don't care. You've had enough time.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I see people like, I know I'm late or I'm just now experiencing this. Okay. I'm glad that you experienced it. Some people didn't like the Beatles I didn't like the Beatles till I was in my 20s. They, again, came out before me. I wasn't born in the 60s. I've heard about them since I've obviously been born. Art hits people differently in different times in their life. So that's where it comes from, is that you're never late for art. Art is on time for you.
That means a lot to me, because I think, like you were saying, like somebody might have had a crisis, had bills to pay, especially with video games. When you think about, I mean, they're pricey now, but I think that the Nintendo 64, weren't the games like $70 or something?
Yes. Yeah. I remember. Yeah. And it's funny you say that because I was fortunate to be in Chicago and live in a high rise, actually just really, really close by to Wrigley Field. Like you could see sometimes the picture of the high rise.
I know exactly where you're talking about, because I love Wrigley Field.
Yeah. So I grew up near Wrigley Field, like late games going on 10 o'clock, wake me up out of the sleep and stuff in my childhood. But there's a pawn shop. Well, if we were from Wrigley Field, maybe 7 blocks away. It's not that far. And you can walk a lot of places in Chicago too, more than California. So you get there probably like 15 minutes. But from my building, from where I was, the walk is about, I don't know, 5 minutes. And so when I was young and I had an allowance, $20 got me the Ocarina of Time from that pawn shop. And I walked out of there with I will not forget it. I had Ocarina of Time for N64 for $20 from the pawn shop. Yes. And that was N64 was still very off the shelves. My grandma bought me the N64, so I know it was a pretty penny for her back then. But how I got my games was I didn't always get them new, and I got Ocarina of Time for $20. I'm thankful to still have that original copy of that game to this day.
That's a good point. And like, so I have two younger sisters, and have both my parents worked, and as a kid, you just kind of take what you're experiencing for granted, and you kind of have an idea that not everybody's experiencing the exact same thing, but maybe you're assuming everybody's experiencing the same entertainment that you are. But
Yeah.
so my dad plays games, and all of us, my sisters and I, we all play games, but we were a Nintendo family, and it was like, okay, here is one Nintendo 64. Here is one GameCube. And okay, now it's Celeste's turn. Now it's Anne's turn. Now it's Kristen's turn, And we didn't have PlayStations or Xboxes. My dad recently got an Xbox, but until I started dating other people who had those other systems, I was not exposed to it because my parents had, they were paying for us to get braces and like go to Catholic school and just all these other things.
Right.
It wasn't like
they're not thinking,
it's
not on the top priority list.
I mean, the video game shaped me so much, but people aren't really that rude to me. But every now and then someone will say, "What? You've never played Crash Bandicoot, or you never played Lara Croft, Tomb Raider?" And it's like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're not sorry. No, you had your own experience. You lived your life. Sorry that you're surprised. Again, then the response to that, you want to sit down and talk about all the things you haven't experienced?
That's a great point. And granted, most people, I try to find kind people in my life. And it's funny. I love that you were saying like people don't want to work with assholes. I will tell you, when one of the most recent jobs I had, I almost didn't take it because I was going to be one of 4 people to have left my department at another job within the span of like 3 months. And so the guy interviewing me was the CMO at a company. And when he heard I had hesitations about taking it, he was off one Friday and he said, "Can I please schedule a call with you?" This is on his time, on his vacation day. He wanted to talk with me. And he said, "I really like your personality. I really like your experience. What is your hesitation?" I said, "I'm going to feel bad leaving my team in a bind." He goes, "Oh, that speaks to your humanity." And honestly, that's the kind of person I want on my team, is someone who is considerate. Yeah. And while he was my boss, before he found another opportunity, he said, "Mean people suck. No one wants to work with jerks." He said, he's like, "Yes, talent and skills are important, but what's most important to me is how my team treats one another and how they treat other people."
Yes.
This is from an executive with like over 40 years of experience in marketing. So
that's huge coming from someone at that level, because what I heard today on a video I was listening to was the mindset about how someone at a specific company, if they've been in that position for a long time, they don't really know any outside perspective because they're comfortable with who the people that they've typically hired that think like them. And so why would they change it if it's been working? And I'm like, oh, like that kind of hit me. I'm thinking I was able to almost be there, especially like if your financials are good, you have people who think like you, so the machine is running. It's the whole, if it's not broke, don't fix it type of mentality. But it's also a slippery slope at the same time too, because you're not on the other side for that perspective to gain a cognizance of how it's affecting others.
I want to work with nice people. That's for sure. Yeah, like
me too.
Like I want open-minded people, and the best bosses I've ever had. You hear like separate work from personal life, and I get that. It's a kind of a balance, but the best bosses I've ever had took the time to get to know me as a person as well. Like, "Oh, Celeste, what are you doing kind for yourself this weekend?" And I did feel like I could tell them like, "Oh, my aunt has cancer," or, "Oh, this is going on." And they supported me and they had my back and they took an interest in what is meaningful to you. So it's kind of hard to say, but I guess when I say like separate work from personal, like be around people who don't engage in gossip, who don't get joy out of belittling other people or harming other
Yeah.
people. That's not cool.
Yeah. There's a lot of that stuff and negativity in the world already. So we got to protect the positive energy as much as we can and promote it. Definitely just keep promoting it.
Can I ask you
Promote the positive energy.
existential positive question, perhaps? Because
Yeah.
as you're saying
Yeah.
those things, it triggered a question for me.
Sure.
So what do you do? I'm sure you have bad days. You're human. Everybody has bad days. What helps you keep things in perspective? Is it something as simple as talking with a trusted friend, a family member, going for a walk, taking a break?
Yeah, I definitely take breaks. I learn to breathe and do breathing exercises. I have different tools that I typically use of listening to wandering, obviously talking to friends or family like work. So I might talk to my girlfriend, or talk to one of my best friends as well, or something like that. Everyone needs like a venting place of some sort, or talk to my mom, or yeah, there's just different things. Or I might just lie down and go into a small meditative format if I can, if it's peace around me and quiet. If it's not, then yeah, going outside definitely opens up my mind too. So because there's something about space and energy that I've learned, and so the space that you're in, if you're there for a long time, you really do set an external energy that you don't realize. And as you're supposed to get up and walk out that door, if you're not cognizant about how your mind lifts up, but it does something about seeing the sun, something about how the air hits your face, something about turning the corner really does something to your mind in a very small, subtle way if you're not completely aware about it. But if you are, you feel your mood shift drastically. There's times I've been frustrated with clients, and I knew I got to get up, I got to go walk. And as soon as I go and do a walk, I'm way less frustrated than I was. And I know what I'm coming back to, but I know that I'm coming back before I go into that space with a little bit more positivity and knowing that I can handle it and do with it, versus sitting in there and brewing and feeling frustrated because it doesn't help. It doesn't help solve the problem. And I consider myself a solutionist, so I have to live by that and find the solutions to continue to push forward in the most positive energy I can without it affecting my entire day.
That's fantastic. I'm going to start doing that. Because it's so easy to feel like you have a checklist and you have to get done by a certain time. Like, oh, it's 8 to 5. I have to have this done by 5. Well, we're not, unless you're operating on someone or it's an emergency. Most things can wait, or just communicate that to whoever you're working with and say, hey, I need a little bit more time. I'm not in the right headspace,
right.
or whatever.
Right.
That's a good point. Thank you for the Chase. I feel like I'm getting a life lesson from you as well.
What?
I feel like I'm getting inspired because like I actually learned a few days ago, like an old friend passed away, and it's just,
I'm sorry to hear that.
Oh, thank you. It's it's someone we didn't have a falling out. It was just, life happens. Like they have kids, get new jobs, different life situations. But if you would ever see them, it's like you can pick up where you left off. And yes, I've been reflecting on that a lot. Like, okay, I want to continue surrounding myself with positive people. And I think when we're younger, we're trying to get a bite of the world and a bite of every experience. And as I get older, I just want more peace, more tranquility.
Yeah. You said the right P word in my person. I'm just looking for peace. That's all I want. I just want peace. I usually also say life isn't hard. People make life hard. Because if you were in the forest and you were just by yourself, you might encounter a bear. The bear is just looking for food or it's curious. But other than that, nothing is really going to bother you. You have no other decisions that are going to impact your life except your own and others and the animals around you. Life isn't hard. People make life hard.
Oh my God, all this wisdom tonight. I don't, you're going to have to write a book. Well, speaking of, you told me, okay, that's a perfect segue. I have no idea if the book is related to these wise, these wise sayings and this advice, but you had mentioned before we started recording that you are working on a very special project. Would you like to talk about it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the scoop. We get the 1v1 scoop. So I am writing a book in the space of the game audio. And what sets this book apart is going to be discussing small anecdotes and solutions that I've come working in the game industry as a video game composer for the past decade. And it's going to talk about what my beliefs on networking is, my belief on imposter syndrome, why that doesn't exist, and the small anecdotes about how career could have been pushed forward sooner, but and lack of opportunities and resources and other things that have come about, and how I've mentally maneuvered in the space to get to another day and to get towards specific goals and accomplishments that I have done.
Oh, I love it.
So, sorry, yeah, the other game audio books they talk about the technique of writing game music and what you have to do in the chords, and that's all great. Don't get me wrong, and the systems and how to build that stuff, and it's filled with all of that. But what I didn't see, and you get like small little segments of it, and depending on what book it is, it's very minute, as the humanism and the story about the mental gymnastic you go through on a day-to-day, being at least in a freelance world. Because if you're not fortunate to be a video game composer at a studio and hired, which is far and few between, it's only a small percentage in the entire industry that have that job as full-time, what it's like to go and make it and do it as that. And I believe that it's very imperative for my anecdotes to be shared, so because I feel like it's going to help others. We can learn chord progressions and melodies and techniques till the moon comes up. How are you taking care of yourself, and how are you learning from what are you learning from those experiences that others are not sharing? And there wasn't as much transparency as I've seen in the career space. I had to dig for it. I had to become friends with some people naturally, not with malice, but just naturally becoming friends with some really great people and finding my own game audio circle, which is very small, and seeing and hearing and feeling, and then going through my own experiences away from that to determine how to at least land the next gig or plan the promo of things and fight through the noise to and what another thing I think I wrote in the book is mostly I'm just tuning into getting people to be tuned into the right frequency.
Oh,
typically
I see what you did there.
Yeah. that's how I wrote it, and I'm paraphrasing at this point, but that's the message that I'm really mostly trying to get across. So yes, I've been writing the book for 2 years, and I'm hoping to finish it probably within a year or two or less.
I think, and I'll be paraphrasing something too. What you're describing kind of reminds me of how so many people place so much emphasis on science, technology, engineering, math, and those are wonderful. Those are so important. That's how we function. That's how we get about our days. And I think it was something like science can explain how we do things, but the arts and humanities are drivers for our why we want to do things, like our insatiable desire for discovery and creativity. And I don't like pitting disciplines against one another, because I majored in English, so a lot of people were saying, well, what are you going to do with that? 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 And just at my core, my compass was, well, I love reading and writing, and I love literature. I love traveling that way in my mind and experiencing and learning that way. And it's helped me out. I mean, I've worked in marketing, I've done technical writing, and storytelling is everywhere. Kind of,
Storytelling is the basis of humanity. It's how we're able to get a lot of things done. If you think about it, right? It's if you tell the story, it comes with a set of instructions of how things get done at some point. Everything, look around you, from the stuff in your house to the things that the technology we're using. There was a story being told that spawned an idea that started an instruction to get something else done to be made. And so however you do the story, or there's an emotion behind it that gets us and pushes us forward. And it's moved us from the earliest of hunters. I was almost killed by a saber-toothed tiger in whatever language you're speaking in, but the story obviously is moved by something of, okay, well, that really moved me. And then it's okay, well, then with that story, you're thinking, well, I got to make better tools. I got to protect myself better, right? There's the impetus behind everything. And that's what stories drive humanity. It's always going to be that way, I believe.
Yes. And I remember when I was taking some prose writing classes, storytelling classes, it was, okay, I don't care what your protagonist wants. It could be something as simple as they're getting up to get a glass of water, but they need to have a purpose. They need to have like something they need, something, a reason for getting up, something they're seeking. I don't care if it's something simple or something as grand as they're going to look for the Ark of the Covenant. Yes. You can make anything interesting.
Yeah, definitely. If you believe and have a big enough imagination, absolutely. I think that's where it stems from.
And this, you might have read this before. It was on Pinterest, and I'm sure I could find it online. I'll have to share it with you. But it was the importance of music. There was this music professor explaining why that craft was so important. He said, if you were a surgeon, you'd master your craft, but one night you're going to be performing in a music hall, and someone who is very soul weary and tired of life and has heavy thoughts is going to go sit in your audience. And how well you play and how well you perform determines how they're going to leave feeling for that night. Have you heard that before?
Yeah,
I can't think of the name of it.
It's something I've heard of something like that before. I think I mostly resonate with the message that you've told me. I resonate with the message because I know, and I've been told in a different way, whereas I had a friend and I'd hear about his day, and his day as a project manager would be stressful. And so when I would say, well, it would make me think, I'm like, well, I'm just writing music for games. And he was like, no, man. He's like, after my day, I want to escape.
Oh,
you are creating the escape for me because I got to deal with these things at this job for being a project manager. And he's like, games are the escape when we need that. And the music you're writing for that help tell the story and do that more. And what I heard even before that is music is a universal language. So the language of what that person would feel like from that performance is being spoken to without formulating a rhetoric or words to be formed into sentences to get a message across. It's something that is being sensitized. It's something that's sensitive that is being spoken to by another sense, sometimes in a twofold part, because you can feel the music literally. If it really resonates, goosebumps happen, but you're also hearing as well. So it's playing like two parts. The language is speaking to you in two ways, if not more.
That's so important. I mean, I cannot stand being in a car without some kind of podcast or usually music going on. It's a different experience driving 30 minutes without music. Yeah. It feels so much longer.
Sit with your thoughts and you'll see what happens, especially in that confined space.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So you had mentioned that you really love retro gaming, and I know this because of something special we're
Yeah.
doing with Read Only magazine with you. But
Yes.
can you tell us about some of your hobbies and your relationship with retro games?
Yeah, so retro games is the refuel I need for what I do in the industry. It reminds me of why I got into the profession and
Yeah.
the career, and it gives me great joy. I think it started with I've always tinkered with electronics and never was really good at putting them back together, but this continued on as I did get good. I bought a Sega Genesis. Excuse me. The first story is I bought either a Sega Genesis or I got a PlayStation 2 from a thrift store. I'll tell both, and they're both short. I got a Sega Genesis from, I think, SoCal Retro Gaming Expo, and it was $1, and it didn't work. So I took it home. I bought it for $1, and I fixed it, and then I refurbished it. It was dusty, cleaned it off, even did figured out how to polish and everything, and then made about $14 profit. And it went to a home that someone's like, "Hey, I love this. This is super. I'm super excited. I have the Sega. It's been a while. I had this. I had a child. Couldn't find one, and I saw this on here because I didn't. I didn't want. I just want what was fair for it. So I just, yeah, here we go. I fixed it. I tested it. It works, and it's good to go. And it gave me such joy to know that other people were going to have it in their home when it was just in a bin, like about to be thrown away. It kind of reminds me of this is cartoon story. I remember, but I can't remember it. The Brave Toaster or
Oh, the
something. The
brave
Brave
little
Little Toaster.
toaster.
Yeah, the Brave Little Toaster. I loved that movie as a
Oh,
child.
yeah.
And so I was thinking about like how like electronics. I always thought that in anime I would just like have feelings. I don't believe that anymore. But in my way of giving back to the industry and refueling my energy is just refurbishing and fixing game consoles and fixing games or refurbishing games if they don't work, or just trying to restore the discs, or just having that, or just seeing a game that's in a thrift store and just looking like kind of beat up, making it look new again, reselling it to somebody so that they can find it and enjoy it. And so on top of my research, by restoring the games and stuff, I also keep the ones that I find hidden gems, or I don't hear many people, as we in my circle, talk about outside of the folks that I work with. And I find it very fun to collect. And now I'm working on the curation collection of my own, like the Chase Bethea curated collection, because it's not just about buying all the games, because the space just isn't going to happen for me. I don't think it's quite wise. But if I have a specific collection of what it means to me, what it means in history, and do I have fun? And this is typically how I get down. And then I came up with the idea on the small tangent of how it is. But people were thinking like, I got all these games in my backlog. How do I get through it? And so by getting through to making this collection, this curated collection happen, is that I set a timer. I made it every, even though I own the game, I made it into a demo. So I set a timer for 20 minutes, and I don't count cutscenes. So for gameplay only, I play the game for 20 minutes. If I'm not having fun, it's almost likely going to go. If it doesn't pull me in, like I realize, like after the 20 minutes, I want to put the timer on, like how you sleep,
Mhm.
and you're like, oh, just 5 more minutes. If I'm not feeling that, like that pull, I'm like, it's probably got to go. If it doesn't mean anything to me in history, hopefully, like if I've done the homework, then like I'm gonna resell it and give it to someone who really is gonna enjoy it, because I know there is someone out there. And that's where it ends up going into the retro game community type of thing. And so that's how I've been getting through my backlog. And I came up with this system for other people
Ah.
to be like, oh, I got all these things. Well, you got 20 minutes. And if you play 20 minutes for about an hour or so, it's about like 3 or 4 games you got done. And now your backlog's like, now you realize you don't like the game. It's not for you. Or you love the game. It is for you. And you'll continue and go forward and put that proper time aside to go continue on. But then at least digital is different from physical. But I think the same type of approach will work for people who have this entire backlog of stuff, if they can't handle their wallet discipline.
I see so many people stressing out over their backlog, and I'm like, whoa, 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 time out. Video games are meant to be fun.
Yes. Notice I said fun first. I'm not having
Yes.
fun.
Yes.
It's not making me think about it after when it's pulling me in. And if it doesn't mean anything to me in history, right, it's in terms of maybe Tim Follin worked on that one, and that's historic for me. Or maybe this game only had a certain amount of prints, or the art cover was unique because then this artist, anything historically in that matter in the development process, and thinking about that. And so like, okay, well, don't really have that big of a connection to it, so it's okay to kind of let it be into someone else's collection who really wants it there for their collection.
Are you by chance playing anything now, January 2023? Have you had a chance to play anything?
Yeah, I've been, well, besides the games that I'm working on, I'm testing, and I'm still trying to beat this game that's on the Game Boy called Lock and Chase. And I grew up with Game Boys, so this one missed my radar for a lot of years, and now I'm telling other people about it, and I don't even know about this one. And I've stumbled upon it through my PSP because I modded my PSP. And so now I got to find the game. I got to own this game on Game Boy so I can go back and play it the right way and stuff. Because I think I'm almost done playing it. I think I'm like super close, but I vacillate between that, and I love playing the puzzle game Exit on PSP, the actual game. It's on there. And then I'm trying to get into more indie games now. I want to play Forspoken. I want to play Elden Ring. I want to play everything, Celeste, right now. Honestly, I want to go back to Giant Citizens Kabuto on PS2. I want to play Neo on PS4. I was playing Shadow of Mordor actually the other day, and that's the first PlayStation game I've ever platinum. So I'm still finding the time to play games, and I think it's super important. But yeah, I want to play everything. It's not that much time in the day.
I know.
But I do make the time. That's the difference.
Is there a game coming out this year that you're looking forward to?
Not this year. not this year that of a game that I'm not working on that I'm looking forward to. But yeah, I haven't seen. Yeah, like I said, so Forspoken is the only one that came out so far that I've been wanting to test out and try, but I would need a PS5 for that. I don't have that yet. So I need to check the roster. I need to check the roster to see what is coming out this year and see what I'm excited for. Because Scorn came out last year and it's not on that console. I don't like really playing on PC that much because I work on the PC.
You want a distraction.
Yeah. Wait, I take that back. If Breath of the Wild is coming out this year, I'm grabbing that. That's it. I was going
to say, there is a correct answer, Chase. It is Tears of the Kingdom on May 12th of 2023. Yeah.
Thank you. I've redeemed myself. Yeah, Breath of the Wild 2. Oh yes, absolutely.
I was like, please tell me he's gonna say something about Zelda. I'm just picking on you.
No, it's all good. No, Breath of the Wild I believe Breath of the Wild, in my opinion, is a masterpiece.
I love it.
Untenable. It is my opinion. Opinions are true, but they're not correct. So I'll just leave it with that.
I like that.
Breath of the Wild 2, I think it's saying.
Gosh, it has probably been since Breath of the Wild. I mean, I've played some games since 2017, obviously, but that was one of those where on a Saturday when I had nothing to do, like, besides laundry or grocery shopping, I could sit down and play for 8 hours. And
it sucks you in.
Yes.
Your 8 hours during the day don't mean anything in that game. I know exactly what you're talking about. That's why I'm looking forward to it. And I can't imagine it's going to be nighttime and coming down for the day. And I'm just going to be lost and gone. I'm going to look up in real time, and it's going to be 3 a.m. when I know I turned this game on at 6. And the only game that's ever did that to me before was Batman Arkham City.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that you could see where my level of, it's like, okay, yeah, Shadow of Mordor, Breath of the Wild, Batman Arkham City is not too many up there that I'm saying that I consider masterpieces that have pulled me in, right? That's that pull I'm talking about. Whereas I don't realize that I'm playing this game that long.
I can't wait.
Dark Souls is another one too. I think it's coming out. That's probably why I'm thinking like Elden Ring. What's going on? Hello, I sense you.
We need more time in the day, Chase. We need robots to clean our stuff.
Yeah, we're getting there. We're almost there. Detroit Become Human. I will definitely own one of those.
That's on my
if
list.
They ever exist.
That is on my list.
Oh, you got to play that. Yeah, you got to play that. I didn't finish it, but I got pretty far. That one made me cry when I played the demo at PSX. I did cry. Yeah, I did cry. It hit me pretty hard. Just the demo. And the demo in the game is the first. Just the demo, the first level. The demo was the first level in the game. It didn't hit me the second time, but it still hit me because I was anticipating it. But when I played the demo, ooh, 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 I felt that. And I was like, oh, this is a good one. I like this.
Not that I like to cry, but I do appreciate games that make me do that. Like What Remains of Edith Finch is one.
I remember that. I remember hearing about that one. I haven't played that one, but I've heard about the tear. I have heard about the tears.
It's kind of like you have to be in the right mindset. Sometimes people tease me and they're like, it's just a game, it's just a movie, it's just a book. And I'm like, you can say that until you're blue in the face. You don't understand. Like it hits.
Yeah. It hits you a specific way. It touched you.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure there's music and other art that's touched them, and you probably won't feel the same. Or like, and you could twist it on them like, it's just this. Exactly. The way you're saying it's just feelings.
It's just feelings. It's just being human. I don't know what they. So how can listeners support you, Chase? You're doing so many wonderful things. What can they do if they're like, gosh, I really like his stuff? How can I contribute to his journey?
Yeah. If you're a developer, I'd love to work with you. Obviously, if you got a fun game for your project, and definitely reach out and let's talk about everything that you're inspired by, and hopefully I can inspire. And if you're interested in listening to the music that I'm composing for the game soundtracks, you can go to chasebethea.bandcamp.com and support me there. That's the best place. And if you're not able to do that, definitely just stream the music on all major platforms: Tidal, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, all those things. And if you really want to come out and show the support, I'm going to be performing more. I might be doing some virtual concerts. And like I said, my music's going to be performed live in California so far at Cal State Northridge on June 3rd, as far as I know, by the Helix Collective. So come out and support there.
Awesome. And where can people follow you so they can stay up to date with everything that you're doing?
For sure. Yeah. So you can follow me on Twitter. That's where I'm most active, at Chase Bethea. And if you go to my website, or if you just put my name into Google, my website comes up, chasebethea.com.
Oh gosh, you have so many exciting things going on. And this is always a treat when I get a chance to interview people who have that spark, that illumination of joy. And again, life is so short, and it's a pleasure. Yeah. I'm so thankful that BU told me about you. I'm so thankful that you reached out to Kyle about Read Only Magazine. I was like, okay, finally, I can interview Chase. Finally.
As my mom says, nothing happens before it's time. So we're here, and I'm glad.
Oh, so is there anything else you'd like to share or tell listeners?
Not that I can think of. We talked about so much. I know that it's been really cool, and it's been a pleasure to be on and connect with you, Celeste. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for making time. And you're all the way in California, and maybe one day you'll make your way to Louisiana. We'll meet up, or I'll go back to California and visit. That would be awesome. I wish I could just snap my fingers and go visit people. I hate airports. No offense to people who work in airports, but
no offense, but traveling is quite stressful nowadays. I feel you. Yeah, I wish I could fly too.
Yeah, like no.
Without the airplane, just
myself.
Yeah, Supergirl, Superman.
Yes,
Learn to fly. John the Martian. All those things.
I would love it. I would love it. Chase, thank you so much for making time. I feel like we could have talked for probably like 10 more hours, probably, about games and music and just culture. And I thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This has been an absolute delight.
Thank you, Celeste. I really appreciate it too. Yeah, it's been so much fun. I definitely concur.
Well, thank you all for listening as well. And you can find other 1v1 interviews at bossrush.net. And you can follow me, Celeste, on Twitter at FairyCrypt. But until next time, we'll talk to y'all later. Thanks, everybody. Bye. 1v1, the creator interview series, is a product of Boss Rush Media, LLC, and part of the Boss Rush Podcast Supplemental Podcast. This show is hosted by Celeste Roberts. You can also hear interviews from other Boss Rush Media members on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at FairyCrypt. To get updates on the latest episodes, follow the Boss Rush Podcast, Boss Rush Media, and Boss Rush Network on all major social media platforms, or subscribe to the Boss Rush podcast feed in your favorite podcast application. Join the Boss Rush Network Discord and Facebook groups to interact with other friends and fans. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.